answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Overnight, a rapidly unfolding situation. The U.S. in active pursuit of a sanctioned dark fleet vessel fleeing the Caribbean. A U.S. official tells ABC News the Coast Guard attempting to intercept an oil tanker that's part of Venezuela's illegal sanctions evasion. That official adding the ship is flying a false flag and under a judicial seizure order. On Saturday, an elite Coast Guard tactical team seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. 10 days earlier, American forces rappelled from helicopters onto another oil tanker's deck to take control of that ship. Venezuela's government hitting back, calling the seizures theft and hijacking.
Thefts and hijacking, and of course that is the latest as we continue to try to shut down, blockade Venezuelan oil going in or out for Venezuela. Money that they collect and then goes into various terrorist activities, narco activities they have in Venezuela, and then money they get paid on the other end going to various terrorist groups around the world. So we now have a Coast Guard, at last report, still tracking down a tanker. I'm sure they've got it in sight, trying to decide what to do next. We'll get into that in more detail. Welcome to hour number one, Larry Connors USA, December 22nd, 2025. Oh, so close to that magic day. And I remind you, it's not just about Santa Claus, it's about the birth of our Jesus Christ, our Savior, aside from all the commercialism. Larry Connors USA, we're here every Monday through Friday from 6 to 8. And with every program, you're going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You will leave each hour with more knowledge than you have right this moment. We promise you that. And in fact, coming up in the next hour, CBS 60 Minutes just cannot seem to get its footing again. Once again under fire by some inside CBS 60 Minutes claiming you're using politics to edit a piece that should have aired. It was promoted to air on 60 Minutes yesterday. Promoted, video already shown in promotion, and suddenly gets spiked. Why? Well, the new director of CBS News says, it's not politics. It's not politics. There's something else in play. But even Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski on MSN Now admit, no, this is politics. They're admitting it. That doesn't bode well for 60 Minutes when the left continues to say, yeah, you're playing politics. We'll get into that in more detail. And also, Johnny Carson had a list of guests he did not want ever to be back on his program, if ever the first time. We'll share that list with you, again, coming up in our second hour. Later this hour, how leftist blue policies are destroying states. This case we're going to shine the light on can certainly reflect what you could see for the future of Illinois. The future of Illinois could be summed up by what we're going to see with our guest coming up later. Plus, our story behind the story today, a young kid who wants to grow up to be a cowboy. Guess who the kid is? And guess how that went? Not playing a cowboy today, but you never know when I might slip into the cowboy mode. That'll be coming up later. Just a light fun time on here, December 22nd. Back to the issue about this Coast Guard trying to pursue a third sanctioned oil tanker near Venezuelan waters. And again, this is on the information we have now. Maria Bartiromo talking to Gordon Chain.
Claims that the U.S. violated international... Welcome back. We've got breaking news this morning. China's foreign ministry claims that the U.S. violated international law after intercepting a China-bound oil tanker off of the Venezuelan coast. This comes just days after President Trump announced a full blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers traveling in and out of Venezuela. The U.S. reportedly pursuing a third sanctioned oil tanker as well on Sunday. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, your reaction?
Well, Merry Christmas. I think that the Trump administration is doing the right thing. For decades, the international community, through the Security Council of the UN and through other bodies, have imposed these sanctions on various bad actors, but has very rarely enforced them. You know, kudos to President Trump for saying, look, we're going to enforce the rules, because if you don't enforce the rules, what's the point of having them?
Right.
So this is a significant turn, not only for Venezuela and the United States, but for the international community at large.
And he's absolutely right. If you're going to put sanctions in place, if you're not going to enforce them, what good does that do? That is kind of like Joe Biden and our open borders. If we have a border, and we're not going to enforce it, we don't really have a border. Thank you, Joe Biden, because you did destroy our border. That has turned around rapidly, and we'll get into that a little bit more detail later. But Gordon Chain nailing it. If you're going to put sanctions in place, unless you're going to enforce them, they mean nothing. They mean absolutely nothing. One U.S. official said this tanker is flying under a false flag. They do have a judicial seizure order. Others familiar with the matter say that the Bella 1, the ship, has already been boarded. Exactly what happens next, we're not sure. Reuters citing information from independent tracking website tankertrackers.com. Didn't know that existed, do you? Tankertrackers.com said the tanker previously carried Iranian crude. And both reports coming hours after they apparently did seize it near the coast of Venezuela Sunday. Boarding was the next position. Where they're going to do it and have they done it already? I have no doubt they probably have, but it's still a story in play. And watch for the other countries to say, you can't do that. Well, we are. In the meantime, in Russia, a top lieutenant general, former commander of the Russian forces in Syria, head of the operational training for the general staff of the Russian armed forces, died in a car bomb. He drove his car out of a residential block in Moscow early this morning. Boom. Massive boom. They say the visibly bloodied wreckage, which Kremlin is saying was destroyed by an explosive device, now being examined for forensic clues. The Kremlin says they're certain Ukraine is behind it. I wouldn't be so sure of that. Indirectly, maybe Ukraine, but with the war going on and continuing, Russia and Ukraine, and many inside Russia do not want it. They're done with it, and Putin keeps pushing it. I wouldn't be so sure that Russian dissidents didn't place the bomb under his car. Now, that's speculation, but I'm saying I'm not so sure I'd point directly to Ukraine. Could Ukraine figure into it? Yes. But he was killed, and this is apparently another report from Ukraine that came out on it. Notes he has been liquidated. Ukraine's going to jump in and take credit for it. But I got to keep in mind, and you should keep in mind, all those inside Russia that are upset with what Putin has been doing. Now, turning to the Epstein files, the latest on redacting, apparently, some of the redactions that were made the other day before the papers were handed out. The left is looking for ways to destroy Trump through the Epstein files. They want you to forget something very, very important.
To be clear, releasing the files is not what President Trump has ever had an issue with. When he calls this a hoax, he's talking about the fact that there's this narrative out there that the Department of Justice is somehow hiding or protecting information about him, which is completely false, as evidenced by the fact that the Epstein files existed for years and years and years, and you did not hear a peep out of a single Democrat for the past 4 years. And yet we're supposed to believe that, lo and behold, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Senator Schumer suddenly cares about the Epstein files. Yep. That's the hoax. And that's the hoax that has existed for months and months and months. This isn't about whether we would release or not release the Epstein files. As a general matter, we do not release the files of criminal investigations and prosecutions. Yeah. There's laws around that. There's laws that protect victims, that protect the innocent. So we're doing something here that is more transparent than we've done in any criminal investigation in the history of this country. Don't forget that.
And the other point to drive home, the Epstein files existed for years, and the Democrats under the Biden administration said nothing. They did nothing. That's Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. It is he appeared on NBC, Meet the Press. But in the meantime, the Democrats continue to cry foul.
It is outrageous that with all the time they had to prepare, they have failed to release the full Epstein files.
The Trump administration continues to stonewall, continues to not provide us full transcripts, and clearly they don't have a real interest in transparency.
They're just simply willfully withholding the materials. I think the Judiciary Committee should do its real oversight.
Chairman Comer, what's your response to all of that?
Well, give me a break. Anytime I see Adam Schiff on there being outraged, it just makes me want to vomit in my mouth. But at the end of the day, where was the Democrat outrage over the 4 years of Merrick Garland being Attorney General and Joe Biden being president? I mean, this information could have been released decades ago.
And why wasn't it? Good question. Well, there was one photo that showed Bill Clinton in a hot tub, and apparently one or two women in the tub with him. Clothed or not, I don't know, because they were blacked out to protect the victims, not Bill Clinton. And there was another picture involving Trump. We'll come back to that in a moment. Eric Swalwell, though, you know, the one who had Bang Bang, the Chinese communist spy, as his lover, he thinks he can get into this and mix it up as well.
What do you say to critics who think that the release so far is cherry-picked or inconsequential?
I don't know the full extent to Donald Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody other than Donald Trump knows the answer to that, but he is sure acting like somebody who doesn't want you to know the answer to that, Laura. And as you know, as a federal prosecutor, judges instruct juries every day that a witness or defendant's efforts to conceal evidence or destroy evidence can be used to infer they did something wrong. So I don't know why he would act so guilty if he didn't do anything wrong. But the American people at least deserve to know how close their president was to the most notorious child sex trafficker in American history.
Can the Department of Justice face any real meaningful consequences for not fully complying with and the name says it all, the Epstein Files Transparency Act?
The bottom line is this. For the last year, Democrats have asked Donald Trump to release the Epstein files. Instead, all he's done is release George Santos. That's preposterous, and he should just be forthcoming with the American people.
Now, Swalwell, you're a perfect one to raise that issue. You who were betting a Chinese communist spy. And, of course, Swalwell has protection of the other leftists. So what can we do to smear Trump? Now, I don't know what Trump was involved in or not. And if they're covering it up, I want it open. I want everything transparent. When the redaction piece came out last week, I thought that's way too many redactions. There's got to be something that can be lifted. And sure enough, apparently, Attorney General Bondi, under outcry, and gladly she is doing so, going back and unredacting some of that was redacted. If it's not an issue of national security, which I don't see how it could be, and if it's not protecting victims, which certainly could be an issue, I want it opened up. All of it. All of it. And get rid of these little nitwits like Swalwell comes around rumoring and gossiping. Trump's got to be deeply involved. And by his own admission, admitting, we could have done it a year ago. Well, you could have done it during the Biden administration, but you didn't want to do it. There is an issue with one photo of Trump. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche.
You were referencing the 15 files released Friday. They disappeared from DOJ's website yesterday, including this photo of what looks like a desk with a drawer open containing photos of Donald Trump. Just to be very clear, to put a fine point on it, why were these files taken down? You're saying it was at the direction of a judge?
Well, you can see in that photo, there's photographs of women. And so we learned after releasing that photograph that there were concerns about those women and the fact that we had put that photo up. So we pulled that photo down. It has nothing to do with President Trump. There are dozens of photos of President Trump already released to the public, seeing him with Mr. Epstein. He has said that in the 90s and early 2000s, he socialized with him. So the absurdity of us pulling down a photo, a single photo, because President Trump was in it, is laughable. And the fact that everybody's trying to act like that's the case is a reflection of their true motivation. But the reality is anybody, any victim, any victim's lawyers, any victim rights group can reach out to us and say, hey, Department of Justice, there's a document, there's a photo, there's something within the Epstein files that identifies me, and we will then, of course, pull that off and investigate.
Now, the Department of Justice did restore that online photo from the files that contained an image showing President Trump because there was backlash over its removal. And I say good. If there's backlash over removing it, we want it back in. The Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche did say the DOJ removal involved several Epstein file documents, and they did it to comply with part of a federal court order over protecting the victims. Taking Trump's picture out does not protect the victims. I do not buy that. Blanche denied the request of a specific photo having anything to do with showing the images of Trump. Now, the picture I've seen, he's surrounded by 8 to 10 or more women. I don't know if it's from one of the Mr. Universe contests that he was overseeing. And all their faces are blacked out. You can't identify who they are, but just showing Trump. Again, I don't know the context, nor do you. But the left wants to tell you what the context is, and that is that Trump was doing something unsavory. Oh, what about Bill Clinton and the hot tub? You can say what you want about it, but the left just wants to ignore that. Once again, an input from some of those who think they know everything. Ari Melber, MSN Now.
The president has just posted on his social network that he has now signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
We're just hearing that Trump has signed the Epstein Act.
Donald Trump put his surrender and humiliation in writing in capital letters.
He didn't do it in front of the cameras. He likes to do everything in front of the cameras, not this.
Trump does like cameras. In fact, Donald Trump, through a very long public career, has followed the pretty cliched claim that any press is good press. But I guess that has its limits when it comes to press about blatantly hiding a sex trafficker's files. Why would you do that?
Well, if he did blatantly do that and there was reason it should be unveiled, I'm with you. But all you're doing is pouring more fuel on the fire of the story that has no foundation, more allegations, more rumors. Get to the bottom of it. When we get to the bottom of it, everything should be released except to protect victims. I know some out there don't want that to happen. Well, you should. You want full transparency, don't you? I do. Coming up, we're going to look to the state of Oregon. And you might well see in Oregon the future of Illinois. Illinois residents, you need to pay particular attention to this story. That's still coming up. It is not going to be good for Illinois. You can see the path you're headed down. And today's story behind the story, growing up to be a cowboy or not. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
In all these years that Wellington Environmental has been my sponsor, I've never mentioned their duct cleaning services. Allergy season is here, and Wellington crews clean air ducts daily in homes and commercial buildings, also cleaning air handling units and diffusers in commercial facilities. Why? Well, because people will see black dirt and mold on the vents, or they are actually suffering from allergies. Don't be fooled by low-cost duct cleaning providers saying they charge only per vent, because once they get on site, the price will skyrocket. Wellington does not do this, never has. Wellington will give you an estimate, and you say Larry Connors, and immediately you get a 20% discount. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 314-644-4930. Make your home and business better, safer with Wellington. Be well with Wellington. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. John Beal and I were talking. He said, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing. You don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
As we were going to the break, I was telling our Illinois audience, if you want to see where Illinois could be in the future, look to the west. Look to the west. And there is the state of Oregon. And a perfect example, rural regions in Oregon feel beholden and held captive by Portland and everything else. It's very similar to Illinois, southern Illinois being held captive by Chicago and the blue push. Southern Illinois is not blue, but out of the Chicago and elsewhere, Springfield, comes the big blue push. My guest has been looking at Oregon in particular, Dennis Neal, author of the forthcoming Oregoners. But Dennis, welcome aboard.
It's great to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time, Larry, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, you bet. Your book is obviously, and you have anchored CNBC, Fox Business, Wall Street Journal, and Forbes Business as well. Your book is looking at how Oregon citizens are trying to take action as their state is facing an economic crisis because of the Blue Devil.
I'll tell you, being a New Yorker for 40 years, and we just elected a Muslim socialist to become our next mayor.
Did you vote that way?
I became fascinated with Oregon because, in Portland, voters there last November said to New York, hey, hold my beer. They elected 4 avowed socialists to the council who have 2 allies, and so they basically dominate the city agenda now. You've got a place that's been whipsawed by COVID and the George Floyd riots. It still hasn't recovered from a lot of that. In Portland, there's a 35% vacancy rate, roughly, in downtown office space. There's 4 times the homeless rate per capita in the nation. In that place, they spend over $700 million a year on that problem that never ceases to go away. And the regulation is strangling businesses, and the taxes are among the highest in the country, number 2 only to New York City.
And as I said for the Illinois listeners, look at what's happening there. That could happen in Illinois, and it's already happening to some extent. Your book, Oregoners, says the state is going to be gone if they continue this route.
Yeah, well, and Oregoners is kind of my reference to those who are leaving the state, running away from it. They're losing $1 billion a year in annual income as high earners leave the state. They passed in Multnomah County that encompasses Portland. They passed a new preschool for all so that all kids before age 5, by golly, they could go to free preschool. But we're only going to tax people who earn $250,000 a year. And by the way, you people who pay that tax, you can't send your kids to that free preschool. So it turns out they tracked the 1,000 richest taxpayers in the county. And in the 3 years after that tax was imposed, 300 of them left, moved out.
Well, this is not overnight. It's been building for the last 4 decades, and no one was shouting, stop it, or they just jumped on the train.
Yeah, you know what? It's I talked to one guy who's a Democrat operative there who played a key role in helping them in the past 20 years. The Democrats become a supermajority party, 60% of the vote in the House and the Senate. That means the Republicans really don't get to stop anything. That new tax that they passed that just triggered a revolt, that was passed without a single Republican vote. And the guy who helped them deliver the supermajority said he realized later, my gosh, if you just keep reelecting the same party, you have no diversity of ideas, no challenging things that don't work. When things aren't working, how do you ever make anything better? Which is a little belated realization for him after he helped deliver this supermajority. But now you do have signs of a rebellion, right? You have, I had breakfast with Bruce Starr, minority leader, Republican leader of the Senate, and he's one of the leaders of this effort to gather ballot signatures to try to overturn this Governor Kotek signed big tax increase, $4 billion or more in extra taxes over the next few years. And sure enough, they needed 72,000 signatures. They got almost 200,000 in a matter of weeks.
Well, that suggests the voters are rebelling, but is it really going to come to fruition, or is it just talk at this point?
You know, this state more than any other guides itself less by legislative initiative and more by voter ballots. And this ability, you know, I know one guy, he's working on a city ballot to get on there to say, hey, we've got this huge surplus of, like, I think it's 250 million or 500 million in climate change tax that they passed. Yeah. Let's take 50 million of that and hire 400 more cops on top of the 800 we have in Portland. Another guy's working on 11 ballot proposals statewide aimed at kind of enforcing a better response and better standards on a government that refuses to really hold itself accountable. You know, the union domination of this state is startling to me. My gosh, 4 government worker unions kind of run things, and they pick who runs, they pick who gets the support, they put millions of dollars into campaigns. It's unlimited there, I think, unlike most other states that kind of control how much their public government worker unions can contribute, because, you know, they're paid with our tax dollars, and to sit there and have them then use their own dues to then pay the politicians to continue to raise their contracts is just kind of not very good business.
Dennis, we're listening to Dennis Neal, best-selling author of the forthcoming Oregoners. With that in mind, when you talk about the unions, how much rank and file inside the union membership is upset with the direction?
You know, I have no information on that whatsoever, but let me go ahead and try to hazard a guess, because, you know, this poll taken of the voters in late September showed that 67% of voters across the board agreed with the statement that Oregon is on the seriously wrong track economically. And And the only sectors that are growing, you know, Oregon, its stronghold was manufacturing, Intel, Nike, but it ranks at the bottom of the nation in manufacturing growth now, right? Well, that affects union jobs, and the taxes are just, you know, kind of crushing business, and the regulation. You know, what they did to the timber industry down there is just 3 decades later a tragedy. They destroyed that industry, and yet that freaking spotted owl, you know, there's 2,500 of them left. You know, to heck with that bird.
Well, if you're looking at on that basis in the demographics, sometimes you can look to the youth vote and see there'll be change coming. But you're indicating the young people are fleeing Oregon.
Yeah, they sure are. And that becomes an issue because people are realizing, you know, as my children grow up, they're going to be moving out of here. Bruce Starr has a son that moved to Washington, Vancouver, Washington, just to get away from the higher taxes in Portland. So I just can't stay here and pay that, Dad. And, you know, Carla Chambers, who spoke at the Leadership Summit, and she owns a farm, Stallbush Farms in Corvallis, Oregon. She talked about having to go visit her grandchildren in Idaho because her grown children couldn't find work there. That's a quality of life issue. And, you know, I went to that leadership summit. I heard the governor speak. I heard the mayor speak in a breakout session. I went up and talked to him afterward. And overall, there seems to be a state of denial on the part of the political leaders and the government leaders in the state. They just don't seem scared enough yet.
Well, because they're already protected. They're locked in, correct?
Well, you know what? Yes, I talked to one guy, an entrepreneur there, who said, look, every other entity alive gets judged by its outcomes, by its results. But government is the only one where there's a different measurement, and that is, do I continue to get elected? That's all that matters. Results don't matter until it affects the actual vote there.
Yeah.
So maybe this 200 signatures, the 200,000 signatures, and this rebellion, you know, maybe, Larry, that's a sign that the voters are waking up.
Well, that's where the rubber would hit the road. I want to give you a quick moment about Save Our Cities. I know you're a spokesman for that. What exactly is Save Our Cities?
Yeah, you know, I'm not a spokesman. That's just, you know, the guys who are helping me book this stuff. I got it wrong. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I just happened, in all of my research, I came across great polling work done by a firm, Public Opinion Strategies, on the part of Save Our Cities. That's how I came to them. And they're just one of these public interest groups. You know, I'm sure they're probably backed by businesses or something. I haven't really looked at it at all. But it's I've been struck, Larry, by how many people want to talk to me. I've been to Portland twice in the past month, and I've interviewed probably over 25 people, very prominent people. They all want to tell their story because they are worried for their state. And they feel like it's headed south. You know, in fact, the consensus that I'm getting is that, well, we're not going to really fix it yet because we just haven't hit bottom yet. But they're headed there.
That's not a good idea. Wait till you hit the bottom. Dennis Neal, I want to thank you. And again, he's the author of The Forthcoming Oregoners. Thank you, and wishing you and your family a most blessed Christmas.
You too. Thanks so much, and have a glorious day, sir.
Thank you, Dennis Neal. And part of the thing he was pointing out that we didn't get into great detail, that one survey, 2/3 of Oregon voters, 2/3 say the state is headed in a seriously wrong direction. 2/3, and they continue to just go down that path. As he said, they just haven't hit bottom yet. Some have, and some are looking to get out, but where are they going to go? If they're going to Washington State, I don't think that's going to be that much better, because eventually that will also turn. For those who love the idea of the Northwest and everything that's up there, there has been a great opportunity, beautiful country, and look who's ruining it. The blue left is not only ruining it, they're setting it afire. Might as well burn down all the timber in that region. Well, coming up, our new feature, Story Behind the Story. This time, more of a personal story. Yep, the days I wanted to be a cowboy.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Tom Shaw Realtors has been helping sell, buy, lease property all over Missouri for almost 100 years. Call him, 636-532-1922, or visit shawrealtors.com. You want the best place to watch baseball or any sport and be able to enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys? Lit Cigar Lounge. Lit has so many events each month, you need to constantly check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. You don't want to miss anything. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can't afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, I walk into the room, passing out $100 bills, and it kills and it thrills like the horns on my Silverado grill. And I buy the bar a double round of Crown, and everybody's getting down in this town. Ain't never gonna be the same. 'Cause I saddle up my horse and I ride into the city. I make a lot of noise, 'cause the girls, they are so pretty. Riding up and down Broadway on my old stud Leroy, and the girls say, save a horse, ride a cowboy. Everybody says, save a horse, ride a cowboy.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA. Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
Yeah, there you go.
Cowboys ain't easy to love, and they're hard to hold. They'd rather give you a song than diamonds or gold.
Lone Star belt buckles and old faded Levi's, and each night begins a new day. If you don't understand him, he don't die young. He'll probably just ride away.
Mothers, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don't let them pick guitars or drive them old trucks. Let them be doctors and lawyers and such.
Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson. Don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Well, that's what I want to be. And then, you know, as we end the year, get to the end of the year, it's kind of a time to reflect back over what you've done, not just this year, but your life in some cases. And that's kind of what we're doing with today's story behind the story. As you have heard me say before, I grew up in West Texas. My dad was in the oil field business. Dad always wanted to have enough money to buy us a ranch and have horses and cattle. Unfortunately, he never got to that point. But my granddad worked what we called a farm in East Texas. It wasn't really a farm, didn't grow any crops. He was overseeing the cattle being raised by the man who owned the cotton gin. If you owned the cotton gin in a community, you were pretty rich. And Granddad basically was, I guess you could call it sharecropping without dealing with crops, but his job was to oversee the cattle spread across Crockett, Texas, and the areas beyond. There were probably 3,000+ cattle in different pastures. Crockett in East Texas. If you think you've been in humidity, you have not been in until you get to the swampy summers of East Texas. When you see ground squirrels eye level trying to dig into the ground, what they think is the ground, they're trying to dig into the humidity to get below. That is deep, deep East Texas, and it is swampy, nasty. You could not walk out the door without suddenly sweating everywhere. But now you're on top of a horse and you're trying to round up cattle. And you're going through the thickets of East Texas, and every tree, every bush, as Granddad said, has a tick waiting to jump on you. He was sure that they like to ambush you. Now, I do know every time we'd come in, Grandmother would draw a big tub for me and make me go sit in it, and filled with lye as well, I guess, to force the ticks to let go and float to the top. It was painful either way, but I loved it. In fact, from the age 13, I would spend every summer. And I know in the beginning I was more trouble than I was worth helping Granddad. But again, I loved it. My brother would go back with the family and play baseball. He was a better baseball player than me, but I was going to be a cowboy. That was my intent. And roping and doing whatever I could. And sometimes it was the nastiest job you could get. Just like when I went to work in the oil field as a roustabout. Always get the nasty job, but that builds character, in my opinion. And there are a lot of young men and women that could benefit by working on a ranch, dealing with horses, learning how to care for them, cleaning out the stalls, dealing with cattle, constantly moving them around from one field to the other. And back then we had an old spray machine we would tow behind the pickup and the trailer. This thing was filled with various chemicals that I have no idea what it was good for us or not, but we're cranking up that machine and spraying the cattle for ticks and everything else. And then sometimes we'd have to grab the calves and worm them. We had a little dauber we'd put in their navel to make sure worms didn't get in. And every time you grab one of those calves, you got a mama cow that doesn't want you to have her calf. And the calf is bleeding and crying out, and mama is right there. I remember one time we had to put the calf inside the horse trailer so Granddad could work on it. It had not only a problem with the worms, but also had other issues. So he's in there trying to work, and the cow, the mama cow, is trying to climb into the horse trailer with him. And if she'd gotten in there, I don't know what would have happened, but I know Granddad kept saying, get her off, get her off. So I'm out there shoeing and hollering. She could care less about this little pip kid over here yelling at her. And we had times where we'd have to round them up out of the thickets of East Texas. And there was no easy way to rope a cow in those conditions. And especially if you're trying to get some of the Brahma bulls out of the thicket so you could treat them. And they were not going to go willingly. They liked where they were, and they did not like you coming at all. Granddad had a good cutting horse. If you've ever watched a cutting horse, they are amazing. You could just basically sit in the saddle, and they will cut a cow out of the herd for you. But I didn't have that kind of horse. I had to work it on my own. And you get used to making wrong decisions. And you get used to the horse deciding, I don't want you on my back anymore, trying to sweep you off under some low-hanging branches. So you just held on and continued to the best you could. Now, if it makes this sound like something I was being punished by having to do, no, I wanted to do it. I wanted every bit of it. At the end of the day, you felt like you had really accomplished something. And then we had these little rodeos. Every weekend, a county rodeo. And Granddad would make sure that we got to go to them. But the problem I faced, going to the rodeo was going to be a lot of fun, but I was never allowed to do what I wanted to do. Due to my age, I was only allowed to do barrel racing, and to me, the girls were doing that, and they were, and they had better horses. My cow horse was not trained to race around barrels, so I was beat all the time by the girls. That didn't sit well with me. The other thing I could do is roping, but roping goats. Roping goats, I'm roping cattle, yanking them out of the thickets of East Texas. I wasn't strong enough to rope and steer wrestle. I couldn't do that. But there was something else I could do. But Granddad had a problem with it, and he said, do not let your mama hear about this. Oh, yeah. There's more to the story behind the story.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
So I hear an out-of-towner asking someone, where's the best place to eat? Before they could respond, I said, Cafe Napoli. Where? Well, I said, Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and then you got Napoli Kirkwood, plus you got Napoli Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. You'll find Napoli everywhere. It's not too early to book a party and buy gift cards. Cafe Napoli.
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA. Behind the story.
Cowboys like smoky old pool rooms and clear mountain mornings. Little warm
Yeah, but a cowboy is something to admire. At least it was at my tender age of 13 and working with Granddad in East Texas. And even now. I do miss an opportunity to ride a horse. Haven't been on one in a long time. And when my girls were younger, we took a trip to a dude ranch out in Arizona. It was a working ranch. They were not working the cattle, but they got to ride with the cattle and move them along a little bit. And I thought that's a good experience. It's a good experience for every kid to understand life in the saddle. Now, one thing I did want to do, if I could not participate in the rodeos on the event I wanted, well then, how was I going to get around it? This particular event I wanted to participate in, bull riding. Now, these were not the Brahma bulls you see on the PBR. Not that circuit. They are Brahma bulls, and they don't want you on their back, and so they don't care if they're in the PBR or not. They're going to get rid of you. The problem I had, my age. So the year I signed up, I told Granddad, I signed up this year, I'm going to be riding the bulls. He said, you can't do that. And I said, why not? He said, well, you got to be 14. Or actually, it's 15 then. I said, Granddad, I just had a birthday. Yeah, I know you did. And you just turned 14, so you can't do that. Well, of course, then no one bothered checking. Well, I didn't have an ID. If I told him I was 15, old enough to ride, okay, kid, get on. Hold on. Good luck. 8 seconds on a bull is a long time. And at that time, they weren't using automatic timers. You had a guy with a stopwatch. And if he didn't push the start button in time, you did not get a full 8 seconds, even if you lasted that long. Granddad said, you better not let your mama hear. Now, I know Dad ended up hearing about it. They were back in West Texas as he was working, and Mom was watching with my brother and sisters going through the rest of summer. But I know Dad learned about it because at one time, and I've still got the mark on the inside of an ankle where I got stepped on. Split the boot. I think I've told some of you about that before. And my biggest concern, I got to buy new boots. Granddad didn't have the money for it. Now, I have no idea what those boots would have cost at that time. But Dad told me, he said, I'll send the money to Granddad. When you get home, you got to work them off. You got to pay for it. The life of a cowboy isn't always luxury and roses, is it? Hard times. But I will say I was very blessed. I never really got hurt. Got stepped on a few times, more than once. Thrown off, had a hoof fly past my face, throwing dust into it, but God protected the fool. And that's pretty much what I was. How many bulls did I ride? Over those summers, I had them all up. I maybe 50, maybe a little more, maybe less. But it was a good experience. And I sometimes would walk away limping, but I was right back at the saddle the next day. And one of the places Granddad always liked to do, one of the pastures we would go to had a place called the Arbors. It's a little church out in the thickets of East Texas, under the piney trees. And they had a well out in front of the church. They had some covered picnic tables where folks could have a Sunday lunch. And the well is where you got your water. You dropped a pail down into this well and then slowly brought it back up. That water, so sweet, cool, a little metallic tasting, had a lot of minerals in it. But on a hot day in East Texas, any water was good. So when it came midday, Granddad would say, we're done for a while, have our lunch, and then he would take a nap on one of the picnic tables. Me, I'd just start walking around and see what I could get into. Hopefully not any trouble. And when he was rested, back to the horse, back to getting the cattle out of the brush. I have thanked God, I don't know how many times, for the memories my granddad gave me, sharing that part of his life. And my other granddad, on my mother's side, he didn't have anything like that, but he ended up having a lake house, and he taught me about catfish, trot lines. You look back over your past, and your grandparents or your parents, or even friends of the family, how many memories they gave you, sharing their lives with you. You can't take that away. And I do remember the day my granddad passed. It was heartbreaking in a way I never thought it would be. And to this day. And now he's buried in a cemetery in the midst of the East Texas woods. But boy, did he give me memories to carry the rest of my life. And again, I think any child that has an opportunity to work with cattle and horses, they learn more about themselves, they learn discipline, they learn respect, and they learn courage, and they learn what they can do. And they learn there's not much they can't do if they put their mind to it. Character building. Thank you, Granddad. Thank you, God, for that opportunity. Tomorrow, our story behind the story. Paul Harvey. A lot of folks say, this kind of reminds me of this story behind the story you've been doing of Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. Well, I will agree. And in fact, I had to admit that it's kind of patterned after what he did, but these are stories I bring up. And I want to deal tomorrow with Paul Harvey himself. And one story in particular, he would always tell around Christmas, the one about the birds. If you didn't know it, you will hear it tomorrow. The story behind the story, Paul Harvey. Our second hour is still to come. And of course, I remind you, do not forget our pledge. One nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. You and I might have something in common, back pain. I can tell you where I go for help, Esquire Sports Medicine, the spine of St. Louis. They can put athletes back on the field so they can clearly help us. Esquire Sports Medicine, hands-on chiropractic help on Big Bend, just north of Highway 40. 314-644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations. How about the Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield? Enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys. Check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook for details, plus gift cards for friends. I'll see you at Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing. You don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best. America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
There's still so much important work to do, my friends. We're barely a year into this administration, not even a year into the administration. But I'm so proud of the accomplishments of the president and the entire administration. In just a year, we ended Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's border crisis. December marks 7 months straight of zero releases at the southern border. More than 2.5 million illegal immigrants have left the United States, the first time in over 50 years that we have had negative net migration, and it's just the start.
Vice President Vance at the Turning Point USA AmFest talking about what we've been able to do now with Joe Biden out of the way. Joe Biden, who threw our borders open, said everyone can come in. We're not going to bother vetting you. We don't care if you're coming here to make a new life. We're coming here to take a life of an American. And many of them did. By the way, the Department of Justice is now working to close a Democrat-created bureaucratic loophole that allowed legal and illegal immigrants to get a large quantity of taxpayer aid since 1997, despite a 1996 law limiting the aid to citizens. This was created by the Bill Clinton administration. And now we're retracting that. President Trump's Justice Department said we're wiping it out. This means that legal and illegal migrants will not be able to claim welfare, food, stamps, housing, or health care subsidies and many other aid programs. It will likely force the illegals back home. No one wants children or anyone to go without food and care. But when they come in and they start taking it from the mouths of your children, everyone's going to look to protect their own family, right? If you're not doing the best for your family. Oh, by the way, Vance was not mincing his words when he heard through a news outlet that some of the left were attacking his wife. His words, he said, anyone who attacks my wife, whether their name is Jen Psaki or anyone else, they can eat stuff. He does not mince his words. Here we are, hour number 2, Larry Connors USA, December 22nd, 2025. And reminding you with Larry Connors USA, you're going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You will leave this program with more knowledge than you have as we begin. I promise you that. And later this hour, Director of National Intel Tulsi Gabbard goes off on Islamists and trying to make sure you understand the difference between Islam and Muslim and the difference between a peace-loving Muslim and a jihadist. And also would tell you about Johnny Carson and his list of banned guests, the folks he'd never wanted on his program, and even if they appeared once, never again. That'll be coming up later in this hour. Vance is talking about earlier about what we have done with the border. When Joe Biden said it was open to anyone, that was insane, absolutely insane, and dangerous for our nation. And J.D. Vance says we have restored sanity.
When you restore sanity at the border, it shows up everywhere else. Rent prices are dropping 4 months in a row, and more native-born Americans are working than ever before. Kamala Harris opened the border and destroyed the economy. The Trump administration gave you net negative migration and much more job creation. Real wages are finally growing. Inflation is half of what it was under Democrats. Gas prices are their lowest in years. And we have finally made it clear that in the United States, we believe in hard work and merit.
Hard work and merit. And that means you get the job and you qualify it not because of your religion, not because of the color of your skin, but because you actually deserve to have the job and you can perform. And gas prices, that's a perfect place where you can look at and see immediately how it's affecting you and your family. There might be still some grocery items that are higher than what you want to pay, and maybe you choose to buy another brand or you just walk away and find a substitute. But we're never going to get there as we were with the Biden administration. Speaking about trying to turn things around, Trump has also made it clear that he wants to ban wind farms. He wants to put a stop on all of the construction off our offshore, primarily the East Coast, to stop offshore wind farms. And, of course, the leftists immediately claim, oh, my God, the sky's going to fall. We're going to be in the dark. Really? Because you don't have wind farms? And keep in mind how many on the left did not want a wind farm off their coastline. It was spoiled. It would destroy our view. Yeah, those around Martha's Vineyard, don't put the wind farms out here. You can put them anywhere else, but not out there where I can see them and it destroys my views. What Trump says, we'll put a halt to all of them. Good. And are you aware, did you see this story of what happened in San Francisco? This is as funny as you can get. We have a situation in San Francisco where they had blackouts. And the Waymo cars, the autonomous vehicles that drive without a driver, they all stopped at intersections because they apparently didn't have a traffic signal. They didn't know what to do. There were massive traffic jams. Cars came to a halt. If you were in it, sucks to be you. Tesla's Elon Musk is obviously enjoying this because his cars did not suffer that when they had the power outage over the weekend. The San Francisco Bay Area had a massive power outage, knocking out power to about 130,000 homes and businesses. And here you saw the Waymo self-driving cars just stopped in an intersection or anywhere. And he pointed out, Tesla's unaffected. Waymo said, well, we're doing what we can. And another case that has come out over the weekend at Turning Point USA, Nicki Minaj, the rapper, you may not know her that well, don't listen to her that fine, that's fine. I don't pay a lot of attention to it, but she did get my attention over the weekend because she was at Turning Point USA. And Erica Kirk, now serving as the head of Turning Point USA since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, was asking Nicki as to why are you now speaking out about politics?
So why now have you been involved with speaking about politics? What was kind of the turning point for you?
Yes. What was the turning point? Well, I just got tired of being pushed around. Yeah. Sometimes you just get tired of it, and then you realize, wait a minute, I have something inside of me that's stronger than what's out there. That's right. So when you've had enough, you realize, wait a minute, this why do I even care about these people and what they think? Who are they? They don't even know who they are. So I'm not going to back down anymore.
Good.
I'm not going to back down ever again.
Good. If Nicki Minaj, a megastar rapper, can come out and say, I'm done being pushed around just because I want to speak my mind, people want to shush me, that should be a rally call for anyone. You will not let the leftists cower you and back you into a corner. CBS 60 Minutes under fire again, accused of spiking a story because of politics. And MSN Now, the network, is one of those leading the charge against the CBS legacy.
CBS News is delaying a previously scheduled 60 Minutes segment on the White House's use of the infamous El Salvador super prison Seacourt. The decision was abruptly announced last night in this short social media post. The final call to shelve the report, for now, reportedly came from newly installed CBS News editor-in-chief Barry Weiss. NBR reports Weiss refused to let the piece air without an on-the-record comment from the administration. 60 Minutes correspondent Sharon Alfonsi criticized the decision in an email to colleagues yesterday that was obtained by several news organizations. She said her team had reached out to the administration for comment several times and said the call to hold the story was quote, not an editorial decision. It is a political one. Weiss responded in a statement, writing in part, holding stories that aren't ready for whatever reason, that they lack sufficient context, say, or that they are missing critical voices, happens every day in every newsroom.
But if you're holding it simply because the target of the story or the subject of it does not want to respond and give any comment, well, we're going to wait. If you at least reached out and gave them not one but numerous opportunities to respond, and they don't want to respond, you run the story. And you simply say, we reached out and they did not respond. Everyone in the business knows that. You have seen that and heard it repeatedly from various news organizations. But the CBS News editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss, said she told producers Sunday afternoon, after pulling that controversial segment, the team did not do enough to get Trump administrations on the record, and the data presented paints, quote, an incongruent picture. Her decision causing uproar internally. As you heard, at least one correspondent, the one who worked on it, said this was politically motivated. The segment was to be dealing with the deportations that Trump ordered on Venezuelan immigrants to an El Salvadoran prison. Weiss argued the story leaves out comment and perspective from the administration. Well, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But you make it clear that you tried to reach them. Now, if you were ignoring and not looking for the other side, I would agree you cannot go to, quote, press for that. But they were doing that. When Barry Weiss is the executive director of CBS News, a news editor-in-chief, decides to spike the story simply because the Trump White House has not responded, that does smack of politics. It smacks of politics over and over again. You don't spike a story simply because of that. And there was more going on behind the scenes before they even reached Sunday for the story to air. Mika Brzezinski was alluding to it on MSN Now, and her husband, Joe Scarborough, got into the story as well.
This story is promoted on Friday, and then it is spiked on Saturday because the White House decides they're not going to give a comment. That's never stopped an article before where you go, we reached out to the White House, they refused to offer comment.
That line features in a number of the stories that I write. That is common practice. What is uncommon is the chronology here. There's been some really good media reporting in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, other places last night about this. I've talked to some people over at CBS, and they just say this is not how this goes. This piece was done and ready. It's often the administration doesn't have comment. This is something that was edited and promoted. The fact that video footage aired, that is so unusual that they would then pull this down.
Yeah, they had footage on CBS promoting this for 60 Minutes. They had the footage, they were promoting it, and then suddenly Barry Weiss says, spike it. In other words, kill the story. Why? we don't have any response from the Trump administration. If that's the way you're going to do that, then every news story would be killed because we're not going to respond, period. So you have to kill the story. No. That's not how it works. And in her email to colleagues, the 60 Minutes correspondent that was working the story said our team did request responses to questions and our interviews with DHS, the White House, and the State Department. And she added, and I would echo this and applaud her remarks, government silence is not a statement, not a veto. I'm sorry, government silence is a statement, not a veto. Their refusal to be interviewed is a tactical maneuver designed to kill the story. Now, I don't know if the White House said, if we don't give them a comment, they will be forced to kill it. Unless we find some communications between Barry Weiss and someone in the White House, and they say, look, if we don't give a comment, will you kill the story? Yeah, because we don't have the full story. If that's true, I want that unveiled. And I want to know who agreed to that in the White House. The whole story was to show what happened to these Venezuelans put in this maximum security prison. But simply having the White House or whoever in that position said we're having no comment, therefore your story is dead, that does not play. That is not journalism. And CBS 60 Minutes has already been facing a lot of heat, and in part from Trump, suing Leslie Stahl in 60 Minutes, remember? When they fabricated a lot of material. These guys can't win for losing, period. And if they're going to continue, and we were told when Barry Weiss came in, we're going to take a whole new look. We're going to go back to journalistic standards. Journalistic standards mean exactly that. Not that you're going to play politics. You're playing the game of news. And you really shouldn't be considered playing it. You're dealing with it, and you're trying to inform the public, or you're not. That means you become an arm of the administration. I don't care how great you think the Trump administration is or how great I think it might be. Anytime it thinks it can use that kind of leverage to kill a story, to cancel it, I rebel, and so should you. If you're going to do it for anyone else, you should certainly do it in this case as well. This story should have aired. They're eventually going to end up airing it. Now, will they have a White House comment or not? They're going to have to reach a point that even without the comment, we're going to air it, as they should. But when they decided the other day, under Barry Weiss's decision, we don't have proper context, you were just lacking a response from the White House. Some are saying that Trump had publicly complained. He has publicly complained about 60 Minutes ever since Paramount was acquired by new leadership in August. And so we're saying that's why he didn't want it to run, and they decided we just won't respond. Not good enough. And I would tell Trump that directly. Just because you won't comment, that is not a reason for Barry Weiss 60 Minutes to take control and kill the story. And I don't fault Trump if they say they don't want to make a comment, so be it. I blame Barry Weiss, the editor-in-chief of 60 Minutes, for killing the story because they didn't have a response from Trump or the White House. Now, if they were failing to go after it and look for the balance, then I would blame them for doing that. But in this case, it looks like they did everything correctly. The story will come back, as it should. Coming up, our Director of National Intel, Tulsi Gabbard, about the threat of Islam. And we have a perfect example of what's happening in Europe. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
I want to tell you more about Wellington Environmental's dustless blasting services. Wellington can blast paint, grease, graffiti, even stripes off parking lots. Truly amazing and powerful. But can Wellington blast something more sensitive? Yes, Wellington can use dry ice to blast soot and odors off smoke-damaged surfaces right after a fire. Currently, Wellington uses dry ice to clean mold off wood inside a home. Why? Well, dry ice immediately disappears, turns into a vapor. That means no mess to clean up, no damaged surfaces. You need to check with Wellington, always researching and practicing with new, better, faster, safer equipment and products for you. And it's very easy to schedule an estimator for your next project. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 644-4930. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is NewsTalk-STL.
Jolene, 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 I'm begging of you, please don't take my man. Jolene, 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 please don't take him just because you can.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Which issued a call to action to use American legal and political systems to implement Sharia law. This is already underway in places. This is already underway in places like Houston. This is not something that may possibly happen. It is already happening here within our borders. Paterson, New Jersey is proud to call themselves the first Muslim city. They are working to implement in their own governments these Islamic principles that are forced on people through the use of laws or violence. The bottom line is this: when we talk about the threat of Islamism, this political ideology, there is no such thing as individual freedom or liberty. As Charlie said over and over again, it is fundamentally incompatible with our nation's foundation of freedom. And at its core, when we understand that our freedom comes from God and no one else, we understand the seriousness of this Islamist ideology threat, because it means they deny that God is the one who has bestowed this right to freedom in every one of us.
That is Tulsi Gabbard at the Turning Point USA AmFest, talking about the threat of Islam. Non-Muslim, but Islam. There is a clear difference. Many will want to label you as a xenophobic racist if you try to point that out. Inside the Muslim religion, yes, they have the Quran, but just like the Christian or Jewish religion, they have the same Bible, but folks interpret it differently and use it for different ways. The far right, radical right, the all-white, radical white, and anti-anyone of color or different religion, that's not what I adhere to in the Bible, but you can find different quotes and so forth inside the Bible that would give them, oh, look, here it is in the Bible. I'm good. And that's what they're doing with Islam and Muslim religion. When we begin to see our nation change like that, we should not be totally surprised because, as I pointed out to you numerous times, it is already happening across Europe. Europe and the face of Europe and the nations of Europe, they are changing not only their face, but their culture and everything else. And what do we get for the pushback? Well, I'll give you a perfect example. You know the shooting that took place a week plus ago in Australia. 2 ISIS members built their creed on Islam, killing Jews who were attending a Hanukkah beach party. They were all unarmed, and these 2 or more possibly, we think, could have been more that got away, but they showed up and just started shooting randomly into unarmed people. That was in Australia, and we saw that happen. And I told you the first reaction from Australia was, we need more gun law. We need more gun law, and they wanted to push a gun buyback, and they have done so, rather than looking at what they have created in their nation and allowing this to fester. These were ISIS members inside their nation. And they were going after Jews that day, but the next day it could be you. And in the meantime, the Australian Prime Minister said today his government will seek to further expand restrictions on so-called hate speech. Hate speech were the bullets flying through the air as the Jews were celebrating Hanukkah on that beach, on Bondi Beach. Carried out by ISIS-inspired terrorists, 15 shot and killed. The father and son apparently received military training in the Philippines, had long been holding ties to ISIS-aligned groups. But the attitude of the Australian Prime Minister, we will seek to reach as broad an agreement as possible to implement stricter speech restrictions. The planned legislation will seek to counteract the unprecedented radicalism of young people in Australia. You know how you combat that? You show them a better way. But the Attorney General, who is going to be tasked with leading this legislative push, says there will likely be a new criminal offense created for inciting hatred. Just now? That should have been put in place long ago. Of course, you also have laws that you shall not kill anyone, right? They're not going to care about your laws. But this is giving lip service. So they think this will help tap down more Islamic radicalism in Australia. They are poorly mistaken. That's not going to do it. And you look to Britain. An annual survey from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism found that 61% of the Jews in Britain are now contemplating moving and getting out of Britain. Last year, 50%, now 61%. And why? Because they find that more and more cases where anti-Semitism is rising inside their nation, inside Britain. So they're going to leave their homeland. The survey, of course, comes after that Yom Kippur terrorist attack in Manchester back in October. And, of course, what we saw happen in Australia a couple weekends ago. A majority of Jews surveyed said they do not see a long-term future for themselves in the United Kingdom. 51%, compared to 37% in 2024. The London Metropolitan Police and the Greater Manchester Police Force said in the wake of the attack we had here and what we saw in Australia, we will arrest anyone who publicly chants the Islamic slogan, globalize the intifada, which refers to the armed fight of Palestinians against Israel and being expanded to Jews and supporters of the Jewish state worldwide. So apparently they're going to say anyone that starts shouting, globalize the intifada, they're going to arrest them. And what are we going to do in this country? We want to protect our free speech, even when we don't like it. But if it's inciting and causing terror, where are you going to draw the line? How are you going to do it? You can talk in all the lofty phrases you want, but it gets down to where exactly are you going to do it and how do you do it without violating our Constitution, without violating the person you hate, their rights to preach and say what they want. Oh, and then in the midst of all of this comes the most stupid thing I think I've seen today, and maybe for the week, and maybe for this year. Got to be big, right? It involves late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. I have never watched him. I never intended to watch him. He does his program out of Hollywood, California, 5,000 miles from the UK. But now he's been tapped by the BBC to deliver this year's alternative Christmas message on a local outlet, Channel 4, in Britain. The BBC notes Kimmel was reinstated a week after he was being removed for some talk he had about Charlie Kirk. And the full context of his address a week after his removal would talk about fascism. In fact, he's already stated from a fascism perspective, this has been a really, really great year. And the BBC wants to know why their culture is changing and how they're aiding and abetting. There's a perfect example. And you're going to use Charlie Kimmel, according to the British network. You were using Kimmel to, quote, reflect on the past few months in a deeply personal and characteristically jovial address. They have been broadcasting an alternative holiday address to the monarch's message, which airs on BBC One since 1993. I never paid attention before. I could care less what they do. But in this case, they're reaching out across the pond, as it were, to Jimmy Kimmel. We want you to deliver our alternative. Kimmel has told viewers, this has been a strange year, a hard year. We've had some lows, we've had some highs. For me, maybe more than any year in my life. And the other day, while I was talking about this, he started crying in front of his audience. He's very good about doing that. Crocodile tears. Woe is me. Well, I put my millions in the bank and the rest of the people are starving. Woe is me because I can't do what I want, but you've got your own TV program and they continue to give you support. And now the British broadcasting system is going to give you another platform. For those in England and those living here who are from England, you're watching the demise of your nation. And this is going to add to it. This will be another nail in the coffin. In addition to more than 6 in 10 Jewish people in Britain saying, we got to leave here. It's not going to be safe, and there's no future for us. Coming up, the effort to stop Venezuelan oil. Stand by, please.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
We welcome Tom Shaw Realtors, selling, buying, leasing property all over Missouri, almost 100 years. Call Tom, 314-283-5064, shawrealtors.com. Renewal by Anderson asking, are you still battling cold drafts? Windows icing up again? Utility costs surging? You're worried about paying more every month? The truth is, you may already be paying for new windows and money lost to energy escaping your home. And here's the thing, you don't want to do this project twice. Renewal by Anderson spends every day replacing bad technology, poor installation of windows and doors that simply don't stand the test of time. But you can afford the best, America's most trusted window replacement company, Anderson. Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com. Learn about our December savings event right now. 877-WINDOWS, rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. Superior products, exceptional service. I just checked the events planned at Lit Cigar Lounge, so I'm planning a lot of time there. Top-of-the-line cigars, premium whiskey. Check out litstl.com and join me. Hey, and if we get hungry, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, just a few doors down. We can order from the menu, be at our table within minutes. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley and Lit Cigar Lounge, litstl.com.
This is News Talk STL.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
It is outrageous that with all the time they had to prepare, they have failed to release the full Epstein files.
The Trump administration continues to stonewall, continues to not provide us full transcripts, and clearly they don't have a real interest in transparency.
They're just simply willfully withholding the materials. I think the Judiciary Committee should do its real oversight.
Chairman Comer, what's your response to all of that?
Well, give me a break. Anytime I see Adam Schiff on there being outraged, it just makes me want to vomit in my mouth. But at the end of the day, where was the Democrat outrage over the 4 years of Merrick Garland being Attorney General and Joe Biden being president? I mean, this information could have been released decades ago.
That's an excellent point made by James Comer. The left is now crying out because they think they can use this against Trump and the right. But they cannot ignore the fact, and the fact exists, that the Democrats were in control and they had access to the Epstein files for years, and they did nothing. And yes, Bill Clinton was featured in some of the pictures that have been released, in one showing him in a hot tub. Doesn't say he's doing anything wrong, but then again, if they could show a picture of Trump in the midst of 10 to 12 beautiful women, their faces obviously blacked out, but obviously beautiful women, and they will use that to basically try to skewer Trump and tie him to Epstein, then we know why they did not want to get into any pictures that might involve Bill Clinton. I don't know what the real story is, but I think you're entitled to know. But it is true that when you get the left crying out all the time, you have to question, why are you so interested now? Documents were released, and there was a lot of outcry, even inside right-wing and center politics. Why are you redacting so much? Some of this redaction, you don't need to. There's no national security at stake. Why would you do that? And in one case, a picture of Donald Trump was, quote, redacted. They put it back and in turn covered the faces of the women around him. And nothing unusual. Everyone's fully dressed. But just because it was found in the Epstein files, that was something that folks wanted to dive into and say that proves that Trump was involved. I don't know what it proves. It proves to me that he was surrounded by these beautiful women. That's all it proves. And the Deputy Attorney General, in talking about the Epstein files as to how they had come out and how they were basically pulled back when the complaints were they were over-redacted, Attorney General Pam Bondi said, bring them back, we'll look at them again, and then they started to unredact the redactions. That was a turn and a point. Unredact the redactions. But the Deputy Attorney General Blanche on NBC's Meet the Press said, back when the Epstein files were being held all these years, you didn't hear anything from the left.
To be clear, releasing the files is not what President Trump has ever had an issue with. When he calls this a hoax, he's talking about the fact that there's this narrative out there that the Department of Justice is somehow hiding or protecting information about him, which is completely false, as evidenced by the fact that the Epstein files existed for years and years and years, and you did not hear a peep out of a single Democrat for the past 4 years. And yet we're supposed to believe that, lo and behold, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Senator Schumer suddenly cares about the Epstein files. That's the hoax. And that's the hoax that has existed for months and months and months. This isn't about whether we would release or not release the Epstein files. As a general matter, we do not release the files of criminal investigations and prosecutions. There's laws around that. There's laws that protect victims, that protect the innocent. So we're doing something here that is more transparent than we've done in any criminal investigation in the history of this country. Don't forget that.
But they will. Not only forget it, they will ignore it. They will walk right past it. And they will walk past the history that the Democrats had all this in their hands, and they did nothing during the Biden years. When he had control of the AG, the FBI, and everything else, they knew the Epstein files were there. And they did not dig into them. They did nothing with them. Now, does that mean that Biden was involved in some fashion? I can't say that. But when I hear you speaking out the other side of your mouth, it raises a question. It raises a question. And here comes Eric Swalwell, fresh from his romance some years ago now, but I'm not going to let it go, with the Bang Bang the Chinese Spy.
What do you say to critics who think that the release so far is cherry-picked or inconsequential?
I don't know the full extent to Donald Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody other than Donald Trump knows the answer to that, but he is sure acting like somebody who doesn't want you to know the answer to that, Laura. And as you know, as a federal prosecutor, judges instruct juries every day that a witness or defendant's efforts to conceal evidence or destroy evidence can be used to infer they did something wrong. So I don't know why he would act so guilty if he didn't do anything wrong. But the American people at least deserve to know how close their president was to the most notorious child sex trafficker in American history.
Can the Department of Justice face any real meaningful consequences for not fully complying with and the name says it all, the Epstein Files Transparency Act?
The bottom line is this. For the last year, Democrats have asked Donald Trump to release the Epstein files. Instead, all he's done is release George Santos. That's preposterous, and he should just be forthcoming with the American people.
Eric Swalwell has no claim to the high moral ground. He has none. And when he was bedding down a Chinese spy, and I'm sure that Pillow Talk had more than just casual conversation, because she was a Chinese communist spy. She latched onto him when he was in the city council, then a mayor. She saw a rising star, and sure enough, he ends up in Congress, and Pelosi appoints him to a position on the Intel Committee. Perfect for the Chinese spy. And she made big points back in China. And here's this man standing there and saying, well, he's acting like he's got something to hide, so that's a big issue. Eric Swalwell, look in the mirror. We still don't know all your background involvement and what you did or didn't do, because the left was very good at covering it up for you. Speaking of cover-up, state officials are saying that Democrat Governor Tim Walz, Minnesota, continues to send millions in welfare funding to Somalia charity, even after the group's chairman has been charged in a $9 million fraud case. They're still dumping money into the charity in the hands of the guy. The chair of the Somalia Children's Charity, arrested, charged in the fraud case back in 2023. But despite the rest of the board chairman, state officials continued sending $600,000 payments to the group he was overseeing. And they've been doing that since 2023. There was no pause nor even an investigation, despite the chairman being arrested. You see how this scam works? You get inside, you just keep moving. They turn on the light, you scurry under the nearest cover you can. And then when they go away, you come back out. Or in this case, they didn't go away. They came out anyway. No one's raised a question. I'd mentioned earlier we have the Coast Guard still looking to take over another sanctioned oil tanker near Venezuelan waters. They say this tanker is flying under a false flag and under a judicial seizure order. The feds, the U.S. will take the ship and take control of it. Of course, those on the left and those favoring Venezuela saying, you can't do that. Yes, we can. We have a blockade around Venezuela, and we should enforce it. If we're going to have a blockade and we're not going to enforce it, we're not going to enforce our sanctions, there's no sense you mentioning that you even have them. And I have to tell you, there's some Republicans that are stepping over the line on this one as far as I'm concerned, questioning why are we doing this? We should not be into this. Might lead us into war. We're not looking to have war with Venezuela, but we are looking to stop it getting monies from illicit sources that we said you cannot use. And for that money then going to other nations that are our enemies. In the meantime, we continue to have our tariffs in place. And for everyone who thought the tariffs would destroy our economy, keep this in mind. It hasn't happened, and I don't see it's going to happen. In fact, according to the National Economic Council Director Hassett, his facts say this is not just a pipe dream. This is a good case of facts.
I think that most of the tariffs that we've passed this year have proven their mettle. We've got still high growth, which people said we couldn't if we had tariffs. We have reduction in the deficit, reduction in the trade deficit. Imports from China are the lowest they've been since China entered the WTO. So there's a lot of success to crow about in the tariff space. But there are also things that we're hearing when we talk to people like trading partners and companies that trade a lot in the U.S. There are also things that maybe could be adjusted. You saw that we decided to exempt coffee, for example, because we don't make a lot of coffee in the U.S.
And coffee prices are up.
And I think that if there's something that's not made in the U.S. at all, that there's an appetite, and Jameson Greer is leading the effort to study these matters, that there's an appetite to exempt things if they're really not meant to be made in the U.S. because of, like climate or things like that.
So in other words, the tariffs are still doing great for our economy. But, of course, the left has to have something to bark about. I say again, you just look at your gas prices. That is the biggest tell right there as to where we are right now. And remember when they were lower under Joe Biden? They were not lower. But when they were lower than what he had at one point is because he was robbing our strategic petroleum reserve, dumping it across the nation to make those on trips, vacation, holidays. Oh, I can buy gas now. It's cheaper. No, you were buying up our oil from our strategic reserve because Joe Biden filled the market and the pumps with it. Trump has been active on refilling our strategic reserve. And what we're having happen now, the gas prices you're seeing, in part due because we have seen a switch to winter fuel, which always costs less to produce, but also because we are making it better and we continue to go once again and regain our title as a major exporter of oil. Johnny Carson, there's a new book out titled Love Johnny Carson, written by a guy that was a big fan of Johnny Carson. And apparently one of them also a producer for 22 years. And he confirmed the Tonight Show had a ban list. They would not allow some on it. Supposedly Burt Reynolds and Rich Little both claimed to have seen a hard copy with more than 30 names on it. Well, apparently the names being released in this book include, this is one is somewhat of a surprise, Jay Leno, who ended up replacing him. Jay Leno, the book says Leno was banned after the audience laughs were too light. In other words, he wasn't getting that much of a hit. He debuted with his Tonight Show in March 1977 and was a smash hit, so much that he became a regular on the show. But things did go wrong in 78 when the audience laughs were so light that Johnny decided, don't invite him back. And another one, Ellen DeGeneres. She made history as the first ever female comedian to ever be called over to the couch by Johnny Carson when she made her appearance in November 1986. She did return to the show 2 more times and then upset Carson, getting banned for the rest of his tenure serving as host. Apparently, she had been told, do not make a certain joke during her 3rd appearance, but she did it anyway. And right after the show, she got chastised in front of everyone. One of the producers pointing to her say, I told you not to use that material. She looked embarrassed, and he said, you won't be back again. And indeed, she was not. What was the joke? You really want to know? I think the joke was DeGeneres herself. I don't see it pointed out exactly as to what she said. I could care less. William Shatner also not asked back after he broke 3 Tonight Show rules in 1983. Apparently, he was unaware of the unwritten rules and broke 3 of them and turned his back on the host, Buddy Hackett, at one point, and disregarded the Tonight rule that's okay to mention your name, your non-NBC TV series, but not the network it aired on. Apparently, he did that as well. So he was not invited back. Carl Sagan also got booted. Orson Welles got booted from The Tonight Show. Jerry Lewis, what did he do? He'd been on more than 80 times, but then had a disagreement with a crew member, and that crew member complained to Carson, and Carson made a quick decision. You're out, you're off the program. Steve Allen also got knocked off the program. When Carson said, not anymore on my program, that was the death knell for anyone wanting to be on The Tonight Show. I don't care if you've been on 80 times like Jerry Lewis, or you got maybe called up once or twice. No more. It's a lesson to be learned. That book might generate a lot more publicity once it's released. As always, I thank you for joining us. And remember our story behind the story tomorrow, Paul Harvey, and one particular story he always told at Christmas. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.